By early 1864, Charleston Harbor was a crucible of desperation. Union warships enforced a relentless blockade, choking the Confederate coast. It was in this crucible of desperation that innovation thrived. Arguably, the most monumentous of these innovations was the H.L. Hunley. The H.L. Hunley was not a ship in the traditional sense. It was a submarine hand-cranked by 8 men, built in secret, and destined to change naval warfare forever. The Hunley was a culmination of a journey that began in New Orleans in 1861. 3 men: Horace Lawson Hunley, James R. McClintock, and Baxter Watson, believed the future of warfare lay beneath the waves. Their first creation was the Pioneer, a 30-foot iron submarine powered by hand-cranked propellers. Tested in Lake Pontchartrain in early 1862, the Pioneer showed promise. However, when Union forces approached New Orleans, she was scuttled to avoid capture. McClintock later said, "We are not building a boat, we are building a revolution." Undeterred by this setback, the team moved to Mobile, Alabama. There, in the machine shop of Park and Lyons, they began work on a second vessel, larger and more refined. This submarine, often called the Pioneer II or the American Diver, was built in 1863. The American Diver was a transitional design. It was 36 feet long, 3 feet wide, and it crewed 5 men. It was powered by a hand-crank system, though McClintock and Hunley briefly experimented with an electromagnetic engine, but that ultimately failed. The principal engineer of the American Diver was W. A. Alexander, a Confederate engineer from the 21st Alabama Regiment. Lieutenant George E. Dixon, also from the 21st Alabama Regiment, assisted in the construction, which was his first connection to the submarine program. Hunley, later wrote that he provided the entire means for the vessel's deployment. In early 1863, the American Diver was tested in Mobile Bay, and it performed well in calm water, but struggled against the current. On one such trial run, while being towed towards the Union blockade, it sank in rough seas. The crew managed to escape, however the vessel was lost. The final submarine these men would construct was named after Hunley himself and was built in 1863. She was a 39.5 feet long, with 4-foot beam and a 5-foot draft ship. Her hull was made of wrought iron, and her propulsion came from 8 men turning a hand-crank shaft. It was armed with the spar torpedo, which was mounted on a 16-foot pole. In August of 1863, the Hunley was shipped by rail to Charleston. The city of Charleston was under siege by Union forces in the means of a naval blockade. General P.G.T. Beauregard, in charge of the defense of that general area, approved the vessel's use as a secret weapon. But the Hunley was dangerous, cramped, airless, and unforgiving. Crew members had to crawl to their stations, and there was no room to stand, barely enough room to breathe. One wrong move, one mechanical failure, and the vessel became a tomb. Lieutenant George E. Dixon, who had helped build the CSS Hunley in Mobile, was left behind when the Hunley was shipped to Charleston. He had intimate knowledge of the ship, but he was not included in its original operations in Charleston, which would later prove fatal. Within weeks, the Hunley sank during a training exercise, killing 5 men. She was then raised and repaired. On October 15, 1863, once again, she was set sail, but this time with Horace Hunley aboard. The ship sank, and all 8 crew members perished. It was only after this second tragedy that Confederate forces summoned Dixon to Charleston. He was the man who knew the vessel best, and he would be the one to lead her on her final mission. Now that we've established what the Hunley was and who its creators were, it's curious who the crew were. Commander of the Hunley, Lieutenant George E. Dixon, was the survivor of Shiloh, where a $20 gold coin given to him by his sweetheart defected a bullet, so he carried it with him always. The members of the crew were Frank Collins, a mechanist, James A. Wicks, Arnold Becker, Joseph Ridgway, Charles Simpkins, John Kelly, and Henry Lumpkin. It was together that these men would train and prepare for their mission. Lieutenant Dixon summed up the sentiments of his crew when he said, "If I die in this boat, I die doing something that matters." On February 17th, 1864, 2 Union sailors deserted their posts and were captured by Confederate forces. During interrogation, the soldiers revealed that Union officers had received intelligence about a, quote, rebel torpedo boat, end quote, operating in the area. Rear Admiral John Dahlgren ordered his ships to anchor in shallow water, hang chains over the sides of their boats, and to deploy picket boats. These were the first anti-submarine measures in naval warfare history. Despite this knowledge, the Hunley was launched that evening, and she was towed out to sea to be released for her final mission. At approximately 8:45 p.m., lookouts aboard the USS Housatonic spotted a strange silhouette in the water. They sounded the alarm, and the crew scrambled to man the deck guns, but they were too late. The Hunley spar torpedo struck the starboard side. The explosion tore through the hull, and within 5 minutes, the ship was sinking. 5 Union sailors died, but the rest escaped in lifeboats. The Hunley succeeded. She became the first submarine in history to sink an enemy warship. But she never returned. For 131 years, the Hunley lay hidden beneath the sands, and it was only in 1995 that she was discovered by Clive Cussler's Numa team. In 2000, she was raised and brought to Warren Losh Conservative Center. Inside, the crew was found, seated at their stations with no sign of panic and no attempt to escape. Dixon's gold coin was still in his pocket. Why did the Hunley sink? Before the discovery of the Hunley, this question plagued historians. However, since then, since the discovery at least, of the Hunley, most of these questions are pretty answerable. In 2013, researchers concluded the shock wave from the torpedo blast likely killed the crew instantly. The torpedo had detonated just 16 feet from the hull. The pressure would have been fatal. Although the Hunley did not change the outcome of the Civil War, she changed the future of naval warfare. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And have a historic day. And before I go, I'm sorry, I apologize, but tell me what you want in the next video. I want to connect with the community, and I want to know what you want. Thank you, and goodbye.